With the crypto market in turmoil and prices crashing across the board, does this mean that crypto summer is over before it even begins? Well, in my last video, we uncovered the fact that historically the big summer rally doesn't actually happen at the time of the halving, but on average, it's about 1 to 2 months after. And so the question of this video is, if history keeps repeating, then how high is this thing eventually going to be going? And so this video, we're going to be doing a deeper dive into the big rallies that came after the halving in the 3 previous cycles. And from there, we can then make a rough prediction of how high we think prices will be going this time around. Even though it may not feel like it, the crash going on right now, as you'll soon see, is nothing new. Okay, so let's dig in and find out what happened after the 3 previous halvings and if history repeats. And that's the important point. If history keeps repeating, then how high is this thing going to be going? And so when we've looked at this chart in the past, what it shows is the multiples from the very bottom to the top. And this first cycle was 300x, this one was about 120x, and this one a 20 times increase from the bottom. However, what we're going to do in this video, because all of this is now in the past, so essentially, who cares? But the halving, as it's just happened, we're now going to take a deeper dive look at what happened in these 3 previous cycles from the time of the halving. And the first thing to point out is that around the time of the halving, this volatility you can see has happened pretty much every single time. And in the last video, this is what we looked at, and it's roughly about 1 to 2 months before it all kicks off. So this little crash that we're going through right now, as you can see, is nothing new. So the question of this video is looking at what has happened in the 3 previous cycles. Can we get a rough prediction of what is going to happen in this crypto summer? So we had the 2012 cycle there, the 2016 cycle there, and the 2020 cycle there. So let's dig in. And so zooming all the way back, this was the halving of 2012. And of the 3 cycles, it's my least favorite to spend time on because it was just so far back. And at the time, Bitcoin's price was about $12. However, having been through this analysis multiple times now, there are 3 big takeaways. So let's talk about them. The first one is that around the time of the halving, there's always been crazy volatility. And we can just take a look at some of these. So the run 6 months before, there was a nice 239% run there. And then what followed very quickly, almost instantaneously, a 57% drop. So crazy volatility. And even closer, this one was a nice 30% drop. Then quickly afterwards, you can see what happened. Volatility to the upside, and this one was an insane run of 2000%, and it happened in just about 4 months. But then a very painful event, almost instantaneously, it dropped 80%. So the volatility, as you can see, around this time, around the time of the halving, is crazy. So nothing new there. Now we're taking a look at what happened. So you can see there was a lot of bleeding before they actually got the main run. So the total run of this one was roughly bottom to top. You're looking at about 8,700%. So a massive run and lasting pretty much 1 year, 367 days. So pretty much bang on 1 year. So the big takeaways, well, at the time of the halving, there is crazy volatility, up and down. However, the big message is 1 year later, all this volatility that people were worried about at the time pretty much becomes irrelevant. So that's the key takeaway. And then the other thing to point out is that the vast majority of the gains actually come right at the end of the cycle. So if we just pick it up from, say, this point, then the vast majority of the gains came in just over 1 month. And people had to wait 11 months just to get to this point. So that's the other big takeaway. Now, you may think, well, this is just one cycle and it's the one furthest away, so it doesn't really matter, right? Well, let's jump into cycle number 2. And here we are, and this time July 9th of 2016. So what do we see around the time of the halving? Again, very common to see crazy volatility. Nothing new there. We have huge runs, big massive drops. Let's just take some measurements. So we have a run here, which went 154%, a very quick drop correction of 40%. We have a nice run leading up to the halving here of 80%. Then quickly from 80% up, people had to endure 40% down. So the same pattern repeats. Around the time of the halving, it's very, very volatile. Makes you feel amazing when you get the crazy runs, and it is a bit scary when you get the crazy drops and flush outs. So again, this is pretty much what is going on right now. Just as a quick reminder, it pretty much looks like what's going on. Crazy big runs, volatility up and down, flush outs, so nothing new there. Carrying on in 2016, this then was the cycle which just kept on going up. Crazy runs, crazy corrections, crazy runs. Just when you think it's over and you get a big flush out, it just keeps on going into another massive rally. And this one was roughly about 3,000%. And this time it happened 528 days, which is just short of 1.5 years. So 18 months. And remember the third big takeaway. Now take a look at all of the crazy volatility that was going on around the time of the halving. And again, in this cycle, 1 year later, everything that was going on, which seemed extremely scary at the time, becomes completely irrelevant. It doesn't even register. So number 2 was a 3,000% move. And then the second big takeaway, again, it's the same pattern, and that is that the vast majority of the gains come in the final part of the cycle. So just picking it up from this point here, we can see that the crazy blow off top happened again in just 1 month. So the time to mentally prepare for this is now. The insane vertical blow off top, which gives the vast majority of the gains, comes in the final part of the cycle, and people have to wait, in comparison, a long time to get there. However, that's just 2 data points, right? Well, we do have one more. So let's now dig in to 2020. And so cycle number 3, this time May 2020, around the time of the halving, what do we see? It's the same pattern. Can anybody spot crazy volatility around the time of the halving? It's nothing new. So let's take some measurements, this time 6-month prior, there was a nice rally, 360%. Crazy drops even before the crazy COVID crash of a 54% correction. Obviously, this time there was the COVID crash, 64%. Then only to rally into the halving 160%. So 3 out of 3. The first big takeaway, there's crazy volatility around of the halving. Amazing moves to the upside where you feel like a god and you make so much money in a short period of time, only to get flushed out in lots of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And this was all going on before COVID even happened. Takeaway number 2, and this time it's pretty much the same thing that's happened 1 year or a year and a half later. Then all this crazy volatility, which seemed so extreme at the time, it doesn't really register 1 year later. So this still holds true. This one was quite unique as we had this double top. Now the run, let's just take a measurement this time around. It was approximately 700%, and this happened at just short of a year. And then it finally topped out again about 18 months, so a year and a half, at about 750%. So clear diminishing returns. And again, the third takeaway holds true, that the vast majority of the gains, if we just take the last peak, and let's pick it up from here, this all happened in just 4 months. And this time, directly after the halving, it did fade down for about 2 months. So putting all these rallies together, let's take a look and see if we can make a prediction for this current crypto summer. So 2012, we saw rounded up was a nice rally post-halving of 9,000%. 2016, it was about a third, being 3,000%. 2020 was about a quarter, being about 740%. So if we split the difference of the two, then it gives a rough prediction, 2024 cycle being 200%. And if we put this into a figure, the prediction being this cycle should top out with a Bitcoin price of roughly $150,000 to $200,000. So just a rough figure, but for me, I don't see how it gets to the crazy numbers like 400,000, 500,000, or even a million in this cycle. For me, the number is a lot lower than what many people are predicting. However, if history keeps on repeating, then in 2025, this is going to be a number likely being chased. In my last video, we uncovered the fact that the big summer rally doesn't actually happen at the time of the halving, but on average, it's about 1 to 2 months after. This video was all about the big rallies that occurred after the 3 previous halvings. 2012 was an insane 8,600% lasting 1 year. 2016 fell to a massive 3,000% over a year and a half, and 2020 dropped to 740%, again lasting 1.5 years. And the big takeaways from this whole analysis were: 1, clearly there's been diminishing returns from each cycle. 2, around the time of the halving, it's always been volatile, but when we look 1 year after, it's always been irrelevant. And 3, we have to remember that the vast majority of the crazy gains come in the last 1 to 3 months. And so, if history repeats, then right now, this is the time of volatility, and the big gains are gonna come in 2025. And so, from that basis, although it may not feel like it, we are still early. And if we take a rough guesstimate of continued diminishing returns, then we're going to top out somewhere in the region of a Bitcoin price of $150,000 to $200,000. And that is what all this analysis says to me. So there you are, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Now, some final words. Even though it may feel crazy volatile right now and a little bit scary with all the crashes, just remember it's very likely that 1 year from now, all of this won't even register on the charts. So let me know your comments, questions below. However, just remember, to get rid of 100% of the comment spam and trading bots that plague YouTube comments, we are trying out the new SuperThanks Commenting system. So to get your question or comment read and replied to, or just to say thanks, then use SuperThanks below. And for now, just to say, if you did enjoy anything in the video, then drop a like, and a big thank you to everyone who does, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.